is going on, fam? It is your boy Angus coming at you in this new video, and a massive welcome back to my channel if you're a returning subscriber. And if you've never seen any of my videos before, what is going on? My name's Angus. I'm a donut and burger connoisseur and someone who absolutely loves food and loves getting people lean via, hey, what I do for a living, which is coaching people all around the world to master aspects of flexible dieting, strength training, their relationship with foods, and everything in between to be able to love how they look and feel. So a huge welcome to this video. In this video today, we're going to be covering the whole scenario that is hashtag good versus hashtag bad foods. Is it a thing? And basically the context around it all so that you can improve how you associate to food. And as a result of that, well, naturally, your results and yeah, just achieve food normalcy. So we're going to get stuck into some pretty sick content, some examples, and yeah, let's get stuck into the content. So fam, first up, let's look at the whole, I guess, scenario that is where these food labels actually come from. So similar to just like how there's buzzwords in the dieting and the health and fitness industry, there's things like, you know, clean, there's things like super, there's things like natural, there's things like, you know what I mean? Like you've been around for probably a while, you know this stuff, you know, based on just like anytime you go to the shops, right? And obviously if you go online and you search anything like this is the sort of stuff that we see in this day and age. And the reason why there is buzzwords such as this is to basically, well, it's companies using words like this to target your insecurities and the stuff that you think is legit to be able to get healthier and lose fat. And that's them basically marketing to, well, yeah, in essence, like your insecurities there or your personal beliefs around food to get you to buy their shit, essentially, right? Whereas if you literally jump onto Google and do a Google search for the term good foods, it's not going to come up with anything, right? Even if I do it now and if I type in on my laptop, good foods, it doesn't come up with a legitimate definition, right? And if you do a search for bad food, right, you'll essentially be met with a shitload of stuff where it will classify bad food as stuff that is unhealthy, right? With a list of stuff like sugary drinks, pizzas, white bread, fruit juice, sweetened cereals, anything that's fried, pastries, cookies, cakes, and chocolate, right? Which is interesting because I don't know about you, but if you ever jump onto one of the actual food labels or nutritional packaging of any of those foods, you will not see anywhere that it says that it is bad or unhealthy, right? So let's say, for example, we'll do this with a couple of real-time examples, right? Let's look at this bag of Reese's peanut butter cups.
Really, the only word for it is...
We all love Reese's. It's available all around the world, not just in America. Obviously, these are peanut butter cups containing a small amount of peanut butter, covered in chocolate, encased in some wrapping, and obviously you eat it, right? So per serving, which is 3 miniature peanut butter cups, these aren't the big ones, right? Per serving, which is 3 of them, it contains 130 calories, 3 grams of saturated fat, 80 milligrams of sodium, 14 grams of sugar. And then if I look at the packaging at the back, it contains 4 grams of protein, 13 grams of actual fat, and 26 grams of carbs. But if I look in the ingredients and the label, it does not say word bad. So therefore, how is this a bad food, right? Same goes for something that would typically be classified as hashtag clean, right? Or healthy, right? This is X50 broccoli chips, barbecue flavor. Gluten-free, vegan, vacuum cooked, real broccoli, right? So it's a 60-gram packet. It says that it, yeah, hang on a tick, let's have a look. It says here that it's got 152 calories per 2 servings. So apparently a serving is only half the pack. Like, let's get real here, you're gonna eat the whole pack, right? So per half the pack, it's got 152 calories, 2.7 grams of protein, 7.8 grams of fat, and 17.7 grams of carbs. It's even got 3.4 grams of fiber, right? But looking here, in terms of the ingredients and stuff like that, it does not say anywhere that it is good, right? So go figure, right? Next up, let's look at a Lenny and Larry's cookie. These things are nice. They are 10 grams of fiber per cookie, no dairy, no egg, no soy, non-GMO, and vegan, right? So 16 grams of protein per cookie. The serving size is only half the cookie, which gets me every time because, well, it's a cookie, right? It's not overly big, so naturally you'd consume the entire thing. But per half the cookie, it contains 7 grams of fat, 31 grams of carbs, 8 grams of protein, and yeah, 5 grams of dietary fiber per half cookie. But in no way does it say, in terms of the ingredients here, that it is good or that it is bad. Yeah, so go figure. Next up, we have a box of Pop-Tarts. This flavor here I got sent from a American client of mine, because we don't actually have the s'mores flavor here in Australia. We've just got the boring chocolate ones and strawberry ones and stuff. But this one here, it basically says obviously the ingredients. It's got a whole heap of stuff, right? It says that per serving, which is basically one pastry, per serving it contains 837 kilojoules. Which I'm not going to bother working out what that is in calories, but roughly divided by 4, so about 200-ish calories, 3 grams of protein, 5 grams of fat, 36 grams of carbs, and 19 grams of sugar. But in no way can I see anywhere here that it says that it is bad. So go figure, right? And then next up we have a table of 20 mini rice cakes. I got these from Woolies in the hashtag health aisle, right? So it's gluten-free, whole grain goodness, 100% natural, Belgian chocolate, fructose friendly. Obviously says, or made Kate Weiss, who's the founder of the Table of Plenty, says a bit about why these are cool. So per serving, which is like there's 4 servings per pack in this. This has got 68 calories per serving, less than a gram of protein, 2.9 grams of fat, 9.3 grams of carbs, and half a gram of dietary fiber. 3.6 grams of sugar. But in no way does it actually say that it is good. It just says how many calories per cake, which is 17, and this other shit, right? So once again, like none of these foods you can see have actually got a label on them that says whether it is good or bad. And same applies to obviously when we're buying produce, right? It's, well, an actual occurring food, therefore we'd associate to it as being good. But obviously, well, in this sort of case here, you can see that anything that we deem as bad, well, it doesn't actually say that it's bad on it. It's obviously our perception of it, which is where we obviously deem whether something's going to be good or bad in terms of the labels, right? So in terms of this, what we're going to do now is we're going to go into the next part of the video, where I'm actually going to go into some actual depth in terms of a different way you can approach looking at food, so that you don't continue to, well, see it in a good and bad light, and naturally build a far better relationship with food in terms of becoming homies with it, and yeah, loving it in terms of across the board. So fam, before I get stuck into the content of part 2 of this video, what I need you to understand is that, like, for a good, well, almost 10 years or so, I used to see food in that whole good and bad light. I used to see food as clean or dirty. I used to see food as super or junk. Like, I had the shittest relationship with food, and as a result of this, basically what happened is that I would grind hard with trying to stick to only eating that hashtag clean, hashtag good food, right? But then what would happen is that as soon as life got stressful or hectic, or I just had a shit day at work, and like, believe it or not, I used to diet back when I was 14. So sometimes when school was shit, or I was just emotionally, distraught or whatever, I would always go to food, and I would bury my feels and fill that void with basically the food that I was cutting out, which naturally was, well, all the hashtag bad food, right? And what you need to realize is that this sort of thinking in terms of seeing food as good and bad and having these negative labels around it, right, will over time contribute to developing a disordered relationship with food, or eating disorder as it's technically known as, right? Meaning that if you're trying to get lean and if you're trying to build great health and all this sort of stuff, well, why are you doing it in a restrictive way? You need to kind of ask yourself that, right? So something that I actually personally teach my clients, and this is something that will hopefully be of value to you just through watching this video, is rather than seeing food as good and bad or clean and junk and just having this very rigid sort of mentality around how you perceive it, right? What I encourage instead is to rather get rid of all of that and just move forward instead into seeing food. Like, as an overall point of view, it's not just fuel. Like, obviously it's got calories and stuff like that, which is awesome, but food is also a vessel for human connection. It's also, something that we can use for pleasure. It's also something we can use to be able to just honor our culture and the traditions and stuff that happen in society, and it can bring people together. So you got to be aware that, yes, it obviously contains calories and protein, carbohydrates, and fat, and we can use it to fuel aesthetic goals and performance goals and vitality goals in terms of how we feel and stuff like that. But you need to also be aware that, Well, if you're not getting the other side of things when it comes to food, naturally this is where there's usually a bit of a void, and for a lot of people this is where they can, over time, and this is just from my experience and from what I've seen working with people and just what I've seen happen in the game, people can develop some really sort of shitty outlooks and relationships with food, and then eventually over time become kind of addicted to it, which I definitely put my hand up to in terms of, like, for a fairly lengthy period of time, food occupied all of my thoughts, and while I was eating I was obviously very excited, and it was kind of like almost an intimate sort of thing, but then as soon as I finished the meal it was like, oh fuck, the meal's gone, like, and I would already be thinking about the next meal that I was going to eat. And, you know, obviously if it was a shit day at work or whatever it may have been, even after I'd finished my last meal for the day, I wasn't obviously, you know, content and satiated, and then I would just go and binge on everything that I was cutting out, and it would create a vicious cycle, right? And this is something that, in terms of what I teach my clients, like obviously I teach them a whole range of different stuff, but one of the things that I actually teach them is, well, changing how they perceive food, right? And remember how I said before, so obviously most people see food as good and bad, and they only eat from their hashtag good list, and they try and avoid everything that's on their hashtag bad list, right? Which is very black and white. Instead, a much more moderation-based approach is to rather create a personal list, if you will. I don't even really like, I'm not for lists and just kind of only sticking to a certain list or whatever, but rather see food instead as like a always and sometimes sort of category, if you will, right? So in other words, where it's like, irrespective of what your goals are, you will always be able to eat X, Y, ABC foods, right? And then sometimes, based on how you're feeling and depending on what the goal is or the time of year is, you've got your sometimes food, right? So always foods could be things like, well, anything that makes you feel good and that's nutrient dense and contains a wide array of macronutrients and fiber, and it just brings you vitality, and you know, that you really enjoy eating, right? And then the sometimes food being stuff that obviously is hyperpalatable, doesn't necessarily have any sort of good solid nutrition about it, but just tastes fucking awesome, and that brings you a lot of pleasure from eating, right? So for me, I absolutely love plants, and I love various sources of protein, and you know, I've got my favorites, right, in terms of just always foods, and I will eat them pretty much every day of the year, given, you know, yeah, pretty much every day of the year, depending on obviously what season it is and what stuff is available at the time, right? But then in terms of my sometimes list, that's obviously a varying amounts of different chocolate, varying amounts of different things that I will make, you know, ice creams, you know, stuff like that. Obviously, we're coming into Christmas now in terms of the time of the year that it is. We see things like fruit mince pies and all these cool different chocolates and stuff like that. And what I teach in terms of just, well, like using this annotation that I just said just here in terms of this example, if you go and apply that to, you know, obviously the context of the goal, it means that then naturally you can have a lot more flexibility around foods that you're choosing to be able to meet the goal. Because if the goal is fat loss, well, the bulk of your food choices are going to be related to the always list, and you're going to have maybe 10 to 20% of your calories dedicated to the sometimes food, right? Whereas if you're maintaining, well, you're going to have a fairly even balance between the both, maybe 60-40, 70-30, right? And if you're bulking, aka eating for muscle gain, you're going to have all these calories to play with, and therefore naturally have, you know, a bit more wiggle room, if you will, to be able to get more creative with your food choices, right? So obviously at the end of the day, it all comes down to goals. It all comes down to kind of the context of what you've gone through and how long you've dieted for, or what your previous relationship with food is. But at the end of the day, I hope that from you watching this video that it's given you some really good insights and stuff to think about in terms of how you perceive food. So do me a favor, if you got some value from this, give the video a like and share it with someone who you think you could gain some value from watching it. If you're a returning subscriber especially, that would be sick, or let me know what was valuable in the comments just below. And if you're new to the channel and this is something that you struggle with in terms of just like, you know, you feel like you're running on a hamster wheel when it comes to food, and you're forever chasing your tail when it comes to trying to get lean and get sick aesthetics, well, do me a favor, check out just in the link below. You'll see in the description there's a link to my store, and there you can get amongst some awesome free content, some sick resources, and you can even check out my coaching if you want to see if it could be a good fit for you to be able to just, well, master this stuff. Because as I said, this is something that I've been doing for almost a decade now in terms of coaching people to get lean and love themselves in terms of how they look and feel without food restriction. Because let me tell you, if all you know is just abstaining from the hashtag bad foods, this more than likely will develop a disordered relationship with food over time. I can pretty much promise you that. But be aware that you've got things like the National Dietary Guidelines that can help you with this as well. And if you're keen to follow in some of my day-to-day journey, I would highly encourage you to check out some of my social media links in the description below. Then you can learn some more stuff from me and see this stuff modeled in real time with how I live and breathe as a physique coach and a sports nutritionist as well. So big love, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time in the YouTube world. Peace out.
da da da.